Philp, the Shadow Home Secretary, amateur dramatics, Amdram, lead role. Now, we have to apologise.
Nigel.cecil, calling things out.
Hello, Chakabuses. Welcome. Have you had a chance to look carefully at the opening caption to this video? Because if and when you do have the chance, Hilary and moi would like to make an apology, wouldn't we, Hilary? Because we put together these videos based on information you bring to our attention. We like to present them all in the best possible taste, but also a little bit of creative fun. Now, over the past few videos, we've been applying showbiz principles to politicians and the way they endeavour to try and communicate with those who should be the most important focus for them, you, the electorate. Because showbiz people, First Division, know how to stay top of the First Division. And politicians now, well, many of you are saying they're really Third Division. Now, we've mentioned the Labour Party, we've mentioned the Reform Party, and of course, the Conservative Party and Kemi Badenoch. And so you've now got onto us and said, did you spot GB News the other night? Well, in putting together this caption, we sort of called Philp, the Shadow Home Secretary, amateur dramatics, Amdram, lead role. Now, we have to apologise, because amateur dramatics, the Amdram societies, are quite often the first stepping stone for many local communities to get involved with the arts. So, apologies for associating Amdram in what you might consider is a negative way when we're going to have a little pop at Philp. Now, again, Philp, it's just one of those things. We don't know Philp, never met him. All we know is what we see on TV and hear on the radio and the various emails and comments on Twitter, or X as it is now. So apologies to Chris, it's just he was in the firing line when it comes to politicians trying to keep in touch with the electorate. And then we've got our guest stars, Kemi Badenoch, and this is a name not to forget, Darren Millar. And that was the problem. Philp forgot their name, the leader of the Welsh Conservatives. Christopher Hope, the professional in this setting on GB News, knows how to be an inquiring mind of a journalist, to get forward the information. And so, when we're highlighting this, and the way politicians try to communicate with the electorate, we've got, of course, that one uppermost thought, as our friend Uncle Donald so succinctly says.
You know, it's complicated, but not really complicated when you get right down to it, right?
There we go. It's complicated, but when you get right down to it, it's not really complicated. Because the thing is, politicians must remember the electorate come first. Pop stars, remember, the fans come first. You always make the fans feel important. You care about them. Because without the fans, you are nothing. Without the electorate and their votes, and everyone has one vote, they are all equal. Without their votes, they are nothing. One of the things we always say in communication, when you're a politician, think of who you're chatting to. So the other Sunday, was it Sunday, Hilary? I'm getting tracking yes, of my days. I think it was Sunday. Christopher Hope was interviewing Philp, and they suddenly started mentioning Wales and what had gone on in Caerphilly. And, well, Chris may have had a busy night, lots of other things on their mind, and they were asked, well, who's the leader of the Welsh Conservatives? I mean, just have a look at this.
Well, we have obviously fought that by-election hard in the ground.
Sorry, I
we
don't mean
came
to
up
be.
with
I don't mean to be
policies
rude.
stamp duty to
I
save.
know, Chris Philp. I was going to ask you again. Who is your leader in Wales?
I mean, look.
I'm going to ask you again. Who is the leader of the Welsh Tories in Wales?
But we've now got.
I've asked you 3 times.
A new leader.
If you don't know, you can say, who is the leader of the Welsh Tories?
Look, I've been explaining our positive programme for the future, which we set out at our party conference. 37 set out.
I'll just ask you a 5th time. Who is the leader of the Welsh Conservatives?
Look, I've explained that we've got a positive new programme.
If you don't know, you can say it's totally fine.
In the months and years ahead.
Just the 6th one.
We've got a relatively new leader, and I'm afraid the name escapes me.
I know, he's called Darren Millar, and that does matter because the party is disappearing rapidly into the sand of a Welsh beach.
Who's the leader of the Welsh Conservatives? We shortened that video. It went on and on 5 times. This amazing journalist, I don't know how they didn't manage to crack up. Christopher Hope, keeping a straight face occasionally, looking frustrated. But come on, a claim there to Chris for keeping it going on GB News. But look at Chris Philp. Now you can imagine what was going through their mind. They are, well, the shadow Home Secretary. The Conservative Party can't let the Conservative Party down. So probably they're saying, I might just be able to get away with this if I ignore the question. And of course, Christopher Hope, being a professional journalist, is saying, come on, I'm not going to let them get away with this. They should know who Darren Millar is. But should they? Because, of course, their paths might not have crossed, but there again, they might have done. And there again, well, they may just have forgotten. And here is the key thing when you're trying to communicate with the electorate. Put them first. We all forget things. So rather than digging a hole for yourself, Chris should have said, do you know what, Christopher Hope? I've forgotten. I've got a blank. Please tell me. And then, when they were told, they should have responded immediately by saying, the fact that I've forgotten is something I shouldn't have done. I should have remembered. So, if you don't mind, Christopher, I'd like to apologise to Darren Millar here and now and say that after this show, I'm going to reach out to them so we can put right what I've forgotten. I mean, you could say it in all different ways, but you have to answer the question. You can't keep putting it off. Don't be afraid to admit we've got it wrong. But politicians now, well, we can't admit we've got it wrong. I mean, Keir Starmer, one thing one day, another thing the next day. And it's happening with everyone. They're afraid to admit they've got it wrong. But this maybe is a fault of social media as well. Because we can feel important, can't we? When we can suddenly say, hey, have a pop, they've got it wrong. This is why sometimes, especially when we're dealing with equity, the trade union for professional actors, variety entertainers and other creatives across the United Kingdom, because they're driven by an ideology, I put the disclaimer on, don't we, Hillary? Because we can't be right with everything. And when we've got it wrong, we need to admit it. Put the people first. Princess Diana was wonderful in always putting the people first. Sitting at the bedside of the patient who had HIV/AIDS, and they reached out and held their hand. For that moment, they were more important than Princess Diana. And that's what pop stars always make others feel. When they invite a fan on stage, suddenly the fan is the most important person. So Chris Philp, when they're chatting with Christopher Hope, answer the question. Do you know? No, Christopher, I don't know. I've actually forgotten, and I'm regretting the fact that I don't know, and I apologise. Please tell me, and then we can reach out. Those are the words we mentioned before, and we'll be coming back to it. Prepare Anticipate. Those are the two things politicians, celebrities know what to do, but never presume, never assume. Never assume I'm the shadow Home Secretary, so I'm important. There's a little story. I've got a book from United Christian Broadcasting, and we read it each night, don't we, Hillary? It sometimes comes up with things, well, it causes us to think as we're going to sleep. And it was on Monday night, believe it or not, there was a story which we're going to adapt. Never assume that you're the most important person. So thanks to United Christian Broadcasting, the word for today, I think it's called. But you see, there was this Home Secretary, shadow Home Secretary, and they'd gone to a rather posh upmarket hotel with their wife to have a celebratory meal. And as they're leaving, the commissionaire's there, and the commissionaire's opening the door, and suddenly somebody says, Shadow Home Secretary, may we just have a word with you? And so they turned round to the wife and said, please, I'll just be a minute. And they popped back into the hotel, and they returned to see the wife having a rather intimate discussion with the commissionaire. And so when they got in their car afterwards, the Shadow Home Secretary said, Dearest, why were you having such a, if you don't mind my asking, an intimate conversation with the commissionaire? And she said, well, when I was at school, we were at school together, and we were rather, well, they were my first crush. And the Shadow Home Secretary turned round and said, of course, come on, aren't you glad then you married me rather than the commissionaire? And the wife turned round and said, well, no, not actually, because if I had married them, they would now be Shadow Home Secretary and you would be the commissionaire. Think about it. So always put the electorate first. That's what First Division and staying at the First Division is all about, which brings us to the question, in failing to do that, probably trying to defend their credibility and the Conservative Party, have they sidelined Kemi Badenoch? Because they'll be saying, well, Kemi Badenoch doesn't know. And just look at the CV. We've got to put it on the screen, haven't we, Hillary? Of Darren Millar. Wonderful. They've been involved with Welsh politics for ages, achieved all sorts of things. Why not then? Because this is why we've delayed this video to today. We've checked Chris's social media. They've not reached out to Darren at all. And if you really want to put everyone else first, why doesn't Chris reach out to Darren or even Kemi Badenoch and say, come on, we'd like to pop to your area. Towyn, they come from Towyn. As a little kid, we went to Rill, didn't we? All around there. We had wonderful times, happy memories of Towyn. There's a caravan site there, I think we stayed at once. But you could reach out, and that's what it's all about. So Chris Philp, if you get this message, may we just politely suggest you reach out to Darren, go and visit them, build on what you've done. The fact that we've made a mistake is something to be built on, not something to hide. Because if we want to achieve our best in showbiz, you have a flop, the record fails, you come back with a better one. Because you know, if you believe in yourself and you believe in your supporters and what you stand for, you're as good as your next hit record. So, with that, apologies again to Amdram. How to trash the Tories. Has Chris Philp managed to do that? Or will they come bounding back and go and meet Darren Millar? Towyn really is a nice place. Until the next time, Chuckabuzzies, do let us know what you think. And thank you for watching. And as we always say, especially as we mention equity, to all artists, good work. To all workers, good art. And to everyone, equity. And of course, if you're in showbiz, it's better to keep your professional fingers crossed.
Nigel.cecil, calling things out.